Hi, I'm Sid. I'm CEO and co-founder at GitLab, and this is about our monitoring vision. And I'm here with Sarah and Kenny. Sarah, you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, my name is Sarah Waldner, and I'm a product manager within the monitor stage at GitLab. Kenny, over to you.
Yep, Kenny Johnston. I am the director of product management for our ops section, which includes the configure and monitor stages.
Cool. Hey, I think I've been noticing like we have a great vision and we've got some great worksheets where we talk about how to triage, how to resolve, how to improve monitoring further. But we get some things that are still very minimal in GitLab today. For example, the logs are not aggregated. The logs all live in the individual containers, which is kind of a bad practice. Like you shouldn't do that. And logging is such an essential element of monitoring. So that was one of the questions, like, what's our plan for that? When are we going to aggregate the logs, and what's the minimum step to get there?
Yeah, so, and I'll just say there's two halves of our monitor group. One is the health side, which Sarah is the product manager on, and the other one is the APM side, which we have a new product manager named Dove, who came to us from Elastic, who was not able to attend. We have on the schedule for 12.5 the installation of Elastic to your Kubernetes cluster so that we can start aggregating the logs. And he also has an issue this release that at a minimum lets you select the pod, because today when you go to the environment and if there are multiple pods, it just selects the first one automatically. It kind of assumes that there's only one pod for that environment. So
GitLab, it auto scales to 1.
Exactly, which works well for the auto DevOps use case. But yeah, the plan is to do both of those simultaneously. So we'll start preparing for when we have more aggregation, but even today we can start giving you a more robust view of your logging, and that's on the 12.5 schedule.
Love it. I think those are exactly the two right things. Like make the existing functionality, although very, very minimal, make it at least work, and then also work on Elasticsearch. And I want to check an assumption. The assumption is like when you install Elasticsearch, GitLab will automatically start sending all your logs there. It will install whatever it is, Logstash or something else, Feldbeat on that. Yeah. Cool. That's great. And Sarah, I'm sorry if this is not super relevant for you, because I think you've been doing great work on the health side, and I got a lot of there's a lot of progress there, so I'm not worried. The only question there is, and I think I asked it before, but why not show that it's important? Is how are we doing on auto remediation? Is that on track to launch this year? And auto remediation is, hey, I got a dependency that a vulnerability was found in a dependency I use, and it gets updated without me doing anything.
And that is not actually in Sarah's world, that's in our secure world. Okay. But it is on schedule. I was talking to David, the director of product for the secure stage, but I think it's scheduled for 12.6, the last release of the year, which would be in December.
Cool, that's cool. And it seems something that is across the company, that there's multiple departments involved.
Yeah, correct. And I guess in the sense that it doesn't create an incident, it just creates a merge request. And so Sarah's world in health is really about incident and that kind of firefighting response. There's also a bunch of work that Sarah recently did an opportunity canvas review around error tracking, which is important not just for production applications, but developers who need to debug their code in development environments can have the errors sent to a service like Sentry. And so Sarah's working on improving that, including adding the ability to install Sentry as a managed app on your cluster. Cool.
Sarah, you want to elaborate on that?
Yes. So in the phase of this, into both triaging from the developer perspective and then leveraging a lot of the incident management workflows that we built in this prior quarter so that we can easily get up and running, as Kenny said. So we're creating an app that makes it really easy for people to install it with their instances of GitLab. So be a minimal configuration. And then we're further embedding it in the GitLab development workflow. So correlation between Sentry errors and releases, Sentry errors and merge requests, servicing all of this intelligence that we get from our open source partner and different places within GitLab. Ultimate goal being how much information can we provide someone within GitLab so that they don't ever need to go to Sentry without actually rebuilding all of the workflows and functionality that Sentry provides. So
That is
that's the
such a good
overview.
strategy. That I'm loving that. I think it's so great that we're first like using Sentry to the maximum so we can kind of get value to our customers as soon as possible. And then don't forget about the long-term goal of having everything in a single interface. But I agree that even if it's in the GitLab interface, we can still like, for example, aggregating errors and making sure that errors that are about the same thing get combined together. That's such a hard thing that takes years of experience, and Sentry is doing such a good job at doing that. They're so good about their open source values. Like everything on Sentry.com ships in their open source client. So I love that you're combining that, and I think viewing Sentry as a piece of infrastructure, like if you Prometheus, for example, is exactly the right path. I'm gonna keep trying to have a question that's at least relevant to you. I'm not sure this is one, but I'm interested in it, so I'll ask anyway. When you look at the health of things, it's really important to get kind of an overview of the entire cluster. And I think there's a nice cluster view in Datadog. Red Hat is making progress with Kiali that has a nice cluster view. I'm not sure that Honeycomb has a cluster view, but they're shipping all kinds of other awesome things. Is that something you're looking at? Like, hey, there's an incident. Can I quickly get an overview of all my clusters and where the problems are?
That's part of the future vision that Kenny, Dove, and I are collaborating on. So my vision of what that would look like is holistic infrastructure systems and where they are running with different visual indications that allow you to easily drill in on that part of the service. And so as you pick a system or a service and your view expands to include just that section of your application, you're provided with the metrics, the aggregated logs, the stack traces, the synthetics, the impact on your user, additionally business metrics that you've set within GitLab, where you are or where you have exceeded your service level objectives thresholds. And so Splunk does this a little bit, where they had the bigger view and then the really easy way to drill in and then link to other services within GitLab that give you more insight. So yes, on the roadmap, no, we do not have mocks right now, but that's the ultimate goal of, from a health perspective, where I would like to be.
Cool, sounds great.
So I think there's also an interesting dialogue about, if you don't mind, about the persona we're serving, because we are seeing a trend where centralized teams are managing infrastructure as a platform for the individual development teams. And so in some cases, there is just the unique, I'm the person who's in charge of providing a platform for the developers within my organization. And I want to get a view of the health of that, independent of the applications or services running on it. And so that is happening more in our configure stage, where you can attach a group level cluster or an instance level cluster today. But we're building out views in that world, which are slightly different than Sarah's, which is more about a triage operation where you know something went wrong with an application, and one of the places you might investigate is the system or cluster metrics.
Cool. Yeah, that makes sense. Are we getting demand from that persona? Like, are these people, I assume those people are not using GitLab a lot yet, so we're not getting a lot of traction there, or are we seeing people asking for those features?
I think we see it a little bit in, well, so first of all, we're dogfooding it in that we're starting to build a project within GitLab called GitLab Services that has a number of different internal smaller applications running on it. And so we're starting to see more usage there. And we're seeing customers ask for it maybe in the roundabout way because they're doing infrastructure as code, where they're managing that platform as a specific GitLab project and then using Terraform to deploy and kind of like monitor the health of it. So today, to the extent that people aren't doing that directly with Kubernetes, we're seeing it as infrastructure as code. We'd like to continue to support teams who are doing it with Kubernetes, and we have a dog food use case today.
Cool. That's great. I love the dog fooding with our own infrastructure teams. If you're going to triage a problem, it's really important to go from, you're going from alert to probably metrics that cause the alert, probably to logs to look at like what specifically is going wrong. And like a way to do that is select time in that incident and then view the relevant logs. I think, for example, Datadog does a great job of showing that. When are we going to go there with GitLab? And if so, what's the route to that? What's a rough timeline? What are the steps we need to do? Because it's super hard to combine like different things, like the logs from Prometheus, the logs from Elasticsearch, and the metrics from Prometheus in a single view. How are you thinking about that?
So Sarah comes from a world where she's intimately familiar with that process. I guess from so yes, we definitely want to do that. That is a common core part of the workflows I think we're describing in the triage process. Thinking through how we get there, first is getting more logs and a view of logs and ability. Like if we have aggregated logs and then you can select logs by time slice, then you can add to the...
no use to have a time slice if you're not aggregating the logs. So
right. But then I think, we stand on a charting tool called eCharts, and I'm not sure how supportive that would be to that kind of interaction. So that might force us to rethink that choice. Because
is there any charting tool that can do that? I don't think like something like D3 has support either. I think we have to make it ourselves anyway. I don't think we need to leave eCharts. I just think we need to build on top of it.
Yeah, so and that I guess what I was saying might require significant investment in eCharts.
Yeah, for sure.
To make that a reality. I know we do some slider selection today in zoom in and zoom out. So maybe there are some primitives there in eCharts that would enable you to do the time slice selection.
Yeah, you can already select a time slice. So the only thing is that you have another widget on that page. Well, the only thing is, it's hard, but you'd have another widget on that page that also gets that information. And instead of showing a detailed view, it will get some logs from that time period and show those.
Yeah. The one thing that, the visual interaction that I really like is that I'm looking at a chart over a significant period of time and I can time slice without zooming, if that makes sense. Like I don't want it to just be as you zoom in, you get
No, totally not. No, it's like kind of you're selecting the time periods and then it should automatically update already. I don't want to adjust the metric view.
Yeah. So some significant effort that is first going to be about logging. I will say one of the things that Sarah and Dove have been pushing is today we think about these things in category terms typically, and we've kind of assigned the groups by category terms, but Sarah just had an MR to also have each group be assigned some of these workflows so that we don't lose sight of like, oh, Dove's working on logging, but Sarah really needs that log aggregation time slicing for triage, that we don't lose sight of the interconnection, because the categories are kind of today in the monitor world are just the legacy fact of the different companies used to have point solutions here, but it's becoming more about this combined workflow.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, in monitoring, it started a bit earlier, like we're a single application for the DevOps workflow, but it's clear in monitoring that there's that consolidation started earlier, and you see all the great companies like Datadog, like Honeycomb, even I think Splunk is adding some metrics to their offerings, or they acquired a metrics company. So I think the consolidation is like in full swing there already.
Yeah, Splunk bought Signal FX.
That's it. Thank you.
Yeah,
great acquisition. Great company. Cool. That's everything I wanted to talk about. Is there stuff you want to talk about or want to show off, or Sarah, you?
We could dive into a handful of designs that we have for error tracking.
Let's do that.
If you want to do that, yeah. Give me one moment. Okay, so while I search for these issues, I'll just give another recap of the plan. We're going to start by making the view of Sentry errors in GitLab far more robust, and then adding detailed error reviews as you want to drill in, and then easy connection to creating issues, which will allow us to leverage incident management workflows we just spent the last quarter building. The next milestone following that will be all about correlation. How can we tie errors tighter into the GitLab workflow? Give me 1 second to find. Okay. All right. Okay. So what we're looking at is our first iteration on the error list within GitLab. You're gonna have the ability to filter by, search by, click out, view it in Sentry, and then that connects you to a handful of different actions that you can take on errors within Sentry. So again, our goal is provide enough information so that nobody needs to leave the tool, give them enough pertinent details so they can decide if they need to ignore, triage, or create issues beyond this.
Cool. Ignore is the orange thing.
Yeah.
And then triage is the creating the green thing is creating an issue.
Yep.
And the I gets me to that thing in Sentry, or it could just get me some more details.
I will get you to more details.
Nice.
Let me find we were playing around with a modal view of that. That doesn't easily support a stack trace, so give me 1 moment to find the next iteration. Okay.
So I does the same thing as if I would click the title, right?
Yes, and we may remove that as that's duplicative, and hovering over an information icon could suggest something else.
Yeah.
So
that's hard. Sometimes you need 2 things for clarity, sometimes not. I don't know what to do there.
And we've got our product designers providing expertise on that.
Awesome.
So detailed error review within GitLab. We're going to do this via the API. We're not going to build out errors as first-class objects. That's a lot larger of a...
yeah, we'll keep the single source of truth in Sentry and just query that. I love that.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it gets super messy.
And then this is future vision. We've not yet looked at implementation of embedding the stack trace, but that's something that we would want. That's a critical part of the triage and resolution process.
I agree. Without a stack trace, it's not.
Yeah.
That's an essential part. Cool.
So that's what we have coming up in the next milestone.
Wow, that's 12.5 already?
Yep.
Nice.
So we're excited for that. Yeah. And beyond error tracking for the health team, we'll be working on the synthetic monitoring MVC at the beginning of next year.
Cool. And that's basically do a ping to a service.
Yep. And we may choose to do it ourselves or base it on a tool such as SiteSpeed. But
yeah, I think SiteSpeed is amazing, and we're using that in the review apps already. So thumbs up for something like that.
Awesome. And that'll be, are you alive or are you not alive? Are we getting a heartbeat or not?
Yeah.
That's the first pass.
And then with SiteSpeed, you can dial it up to like, is it loading fast and all those other things. So love that.
Awesome. Kenny, did you have anything from the APM side we wanted to dive into?
No, we talked about logging, and I know that's been a big part of Dove's focus, is improving the logging over the next couple of releases.
Cool.
Awesome.
What's taken us so long to improve the logging? Kenny, not about people, but like, is there an organizational thing? Were there too few engineers, or was there missing direction, or we focused on metrics and it was so much work to get the e-charts in GitLab, and we did that?
Part of it is that. I would also remind you that the monitoring team is responsible for the self-monitoring too, and so we've spent a lot of time as part of the self-managed scalability working group improving our access to metrics for the GitLab instance itself. But I think, if I'm being honest, part of it is also direction. We spent some time saying, like, is it Elasticsearch or is it some other tool? Should we wait for a service like, I think it's Kiali, although I'm drawing a blank right now, like the other log-related tool. And so some of that was frankly having Dove join, who has a clear vision about what we want to do, comes from Elastic, could probably broke through that a lot quicker.
Cool. That makes sense. Yeah, I've looked around to see alternatives because Elastic is like requires so much compute if you do the index on write, but it doesn't seem like there's anything else. And I think the alternative we might have considered was from the Prometheus people, like indexing.
That's right.
Indexing
Yes.
that.
Yeah. I'm now drawing a blank on the name, but it was
Loki.
there was
Loki.
Loki. Yes, thank you. I don't know why I said yeah. Yeah, and yeah, there was we did a discovery issue a couple of releases ago, and I think just didn't drive to a let's do something immediately type decision.
Cool. Well, I'm glad that's changing now. Awesome. Well, thanks for this overview. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah. Thank you.
Have a good one.